Morning, Water's Edge. It's good to see you. He is good. Man. I am thankful for you. I honor you today. I know that, we've got a lot of people that are either sick or traveling, so please be praying for them as they're coming back home or traveling away. I know this is one of those seasons where we pack a whole lot into a small amount of time, and my encouragement for all of us is that we take some time to pause, to rest, to see His goodness. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. One of the things that we know is we've got a whole lot of our church that's transplanted. And by that I mean they came up here for college and stayed, right? And so a lot of times Christmas is one of those times where that's the time where people tend to leave the most, which is why today we don't have children's church downstairs. And we foresaw that. We put that on the calendar in August, right? So we knew that was going to happen. So today we're going to have everybody stay here. One of the things that we're going to do that's a little bit different than normal, instead of having a 5-minute followed by a time where we break up into prayer, I'm just going to move into the sermon. And then at the end of service, what I'm going to invite you to do is if you need prayer individually or if you need to take some time, just you and God, come up to the front, right? Or you can sit where you want to. That's fine. If you are at a spot where you're like, man, I really could use some prayer, find somebody here. Let's do this. Can you put up your hand if you're willing to have somebody come to you and be like, hey, can you join me in prayer today? Okay, so if you're like, I need prayer today, find anybody that's got their hand up, all right? And at the end, you can go and pray with them. So we'll have prayer time at the end. Those with littles, if you're like, man, we really need to go feed them, you're welcome to go do that too, okay? We'll have an open-ending ending. All right. Next week, I'm going to do something different. Man, I like having conversations with you all, right? And so sometimes I hear like snippets of like, oh, we've done this before. We did this at a different church. And I'm like, I like that. I want to steal that. So here's one of those times where I had a conversation where we're going to steal something. We're going to try it. And if I like it, we're going to keep trying it each year, right? So next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a space for us as a church to do communion. That's not the new thing. We do communion, right? The new thing, though, is because it's the start of the new year, what I'm going to ask you guys to do this week, spend time in God's presence and say, God, what are you wanting me to ask for this year? What are you asking for me to seek for? What are you asking for me to knock for? I want you to listen, and it might be, if you're an individual, it might be just for you. If you are a married couple, it might be, what do you want in our marriage? If you are married with kids, it might be, what do you want for our family? And what I'm going to do is, when I open up that space next week for communion, you can come up during worship when you're doing it, and you can come, and it might be that it's a collection of individuals. It might be just, you know what, me and my spouse, we really just need to have this sacred time where we're going to do this together. Or me and my family, we're going to take this week to think about it, to pray about it, and what are we going to commit to and give to Him? What are we going to create a space for Him to fill in the next year? Does that make sense? You guys like that? Good, because we're going to try it. All right? And it's just one of those things where I want us to just pause and say, God, we give you this upcoming year. How do you want to fill it? Right? And let Him be the author of our lives. Okay, so we've been talking through Matthew 5, 6, and 7 for a while now, right? So we've been going, I don't even know how many months. I'm not even going to try to count it, right? But the Sermon on the Mount, all of this is part of one sermon that Jesus is preaching to people on the top of the hill, and He's going through and He's explaining a whole bunch of things that the next step is when He gets done with the Sermon on the Mount, is He comes down the mountain and says, now I'm going to show you what it means to live what I just preached, okay? So, hey, I just gave you some head knowledge. Now I'm going to show you what it's like to actually walk it out, okay? But before we get there, I just want to pause and just recognize that a lot of times when I was younger, I used to think that it was like, well, there's this teaching, and then there's this teaching, and then there's this teaching, and then there's this teaching. And as I mature, I start realizing, well, this teaching builds on this teaching, which builds on this teaching, which builds on this teaching, which is why I love chiasms, right? Because he's always recalling back to something, and he's building on something. He's like, hey, you've already got this level, there's another level, and then there's another level, and there's another level, right? So in Jewish understanding, you would call that pearls, okay? So a pearl is it's a revelation, it's a piece of truth, it's an insight, it's something that's like, oh, that's sacred, that's good. Like, I need to hold on to that thing. Like, that one, that makes sense, right? And so you string a bunch of pearls together when you do a teaching, when you're doing, hey, this teaching builds on this teaching, which builds on this teaching, and this teaching helps you understand this one at a different level. But then this next one actually is these three combined. Does that make sense? And so what he does a lot of times is Jesus is teaching in a way where he's like, yeah, there's surface level that can change your life, right? Just plain reading the text of the Bible can change your paradigm considerably. And so it's not like, hey, you know what, this is better than that. It's all of it is transforming wherever you are on the journey, right? But he has these nuggets that you're like, oh man, that's good. So today we're going to talk a little bit about something new, the good eye and the bad eye, right? Now all of you should be kind of chuckling because we've talked about that before. But the reason why I need to go into the good eye and the bad eye is because this week it's tied to that again, okay? If you've been like, Pastor Benny, we've talked about the good eye and the bad eye for like a month straight. Yeah, part of it is because we're talking through his sermon where he keeps building on it for like a month straight, right? So, a good eye. Give me some examples of a good eye. We're going to practice this again. Good eye means somebody who is gracious, is humble, sees abundance, compassionate. Here, I'll give you a cheat sheet, right? Somebody who's got a generosity and abundance mindset, desires grace, desires mercy, right? There's a kindness, a patience, and they see the potential, and they have compassion and empathy on people, right? They give the benefit of the doubt to others. They're quick to forgive. They're moved by faith. They're moved by trust. They're moved by hope. They're filled with love. There's an overflow of sweetness from something inside of them that draws people in, okay? Somebody who would have a bad eye is somebody that sees God, sees others, sees themselves, the world around them, with a kind of a greedy eye, a selfishness, a scarcity. You have to store everything up. You have to hoard what you have because there's not enough for everybody, right? So you desire justice. You want somebody to get what they deserve. There's a righteous indignation that like, they hurt me, they deserve to be hurt back, right? They did this thing, I hope they get caught, right? They have little sympathy. They're always skeptical of others. They're quick to hold on to the offenses. They're moved by their anxiety. They're moved by their worry. They're moved by their selfishness. They're often filled with fear. Overflows with a bitter water that kind of pushes people away. Okay, now I want to pause here for a second. Last week we talked a little bit about John 3 and how God came not to condemn the world, but to like offer goodness, right? And so like I need you to hear today, like if your guards just went up because you're like, sounds like Benny's talking a little bit about me, right? If that's you in the room, what I need to do is I need to invite you to let your guard down. I'm not condemning. He's not here to condemn. He wants to invite you into a place of discernment, yes, right? And the first step of discernment is actually looking humbly and honestly at where we're at, right? So if there are things that are like, man, that's me, use it as a, oh, God, thank you for giving me revelation that that's kind of, I've got a bad eye in this area, right? As opposed to, I feel shame. I'm not trying to add shame. He's not trying to add shame. What he's trying to add is freedom. So if you'd rather freedom over your shame, let your guard down, okay? So Matthew 7, this is where he jumps into next. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you'll be judged, and with the measure you use, it'll be measured against you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank or beam, depending on your translation, in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. Another word for hypocrite is actor. So in that day and age, you actor. You only care about the outside presentation. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll be able to see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample on them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. Okay, so surface level, here's some things, right? Here's some reflections. People are going to judge you the way you judge others. So let's pause for a second, right? If I'm somebody that is always critical about everybody around me, I'm inviting people to do what about me? Be critical, right? Do you guys know somebody, don't point, do you know somebody in your world that tends to always be critical? Can you think of somebody? And when they screw up, what's your first impulse? Is to give back what they're sowing, right? What about can you guys picture somebody who's like, always benevolent, always kind, always give somebody the benefit of the doubt, always cheerful, always gracious, right? They fall on their face. Is your first inclination, how do I be critical of them? Generally speaking, unless you've got a really bad eye, right? Generally speaking, you'll give them the benefit of the doubt because that's what they give to everybody else. So at some level, surface level, you reap what you sow with people just naturally, right? Here's another one of those layers, right? If I am always critical and judgmental of other people, right? There's a lot of times that we fill in the blanks. Shame will fill in the blanks, right? So if I'm doing something that I don't feel great about, and I'm usually critical of others, what am I going to assume your thought is of me? I'm going to assume that you're being judgmental towards me, right? You might have a great eye and you might not even think about it, right? But I will put thoughts in your head assuming you're thinking them of me. And then I'll react to the things that I'm assuming you're thinking of me. Right? Does that make sense? If you are at a spot, the measure that you are judgmental towards others, you're usually judgmental towards yourself, and the same level you assume others are judgmental towards you. Right? But the same measure of grace that you extend to others will also be the same level of grace you extend towards yourself, which also generally tends to be the grace you assume others are going to give to you. Right? One of those is a really heavy way to live. One of those is a really light way to live. Who gets to decide how you live? It's not a trick question. Yourself! Nailed it. Good job, Josh. That's why you're an elder. 2, all right, you're going to judge yourself the way you judge others. I just talked about that. 3, don't communicate others' specs until you deal with your bigger planks and beams. Now, for a long time, this is kind of where I got with it. It's like, well, obviously the plank, the beam is bigger, so deal with my bigger stuff before I deal with other people's smaller stuff, right? Is that accurate? Yeah. That's one way to learn this message. All right? Also, it's going to be hard to see when you've got a beam in your eye. Like, Jesus is talking sometimes about stuff, and he's like, hey, yeah, hey, if somebody's got a speck of sawdust in their eye, but you've got a massive, 4x4 coming out of your eye, and you're like, that's a weird visual. Like, what are you talking about, Jesus? Like, a piece of wood that's coming out of my eye? Like, what? Right? Like, how many people are like, that's kind of weird, but okay, I'm tracking with you. I've never seen anybody with a big plank coming out of their eye, but, I'll roll with it, right? I mean, obviously, one of the first things you can think of is if you've got a massive plank of wood in front of your eye, can you see anything correctly? No, right? And so you're invited to be like, okay, wait a second. I need to be able to take the stuff that's blocking my vision, distorting my vision before I can see clearly in somebody else, all right? 5, don't give what is sacred and valuable to people. We're going to attack you over it. That's where the pearls, the pigs, and the dogs. How many people are like, I feel a little uncomfortable with this pearl, pig, dog thing? Like, Jesus goes from, wood in your eye to, dogs, and then they're going to, trample you, and then there's these pigs, and, what am I supposed to take out of that? Good. Glad you're asking. We're going to talk a little bit about it. Okay, so pearls, we talked about them. They're valuable truths. They're insights, revelations that bring life, freedom, honor, love. And pearls happen to be the patterns of heaven, right? So with his teachings, every pearl is a pattern of heaven. So if you want to make his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, you're learning from Jesus as he's saying, hey, the kingdom of heaven is like this. And you're like, how do I apply that and make it a part of my life here? Because if you can make it a part of your life here, then you bring heaven here from there, okay? Judgment. Starts off with don't judge, right? We'll take a look at this. We're talking about pearls when you connect it. Some of the pearls that we've already seen in this, Matthew 5, where he's talking about murder and adultery, right? Murder, what's the seed to murder? Anger. You hold on to anger in your garden, right? Your heart, if you keep feeding the anger, it's going to get to a place of murder. Now, that murder might actually be a physical murder, But generally speaking, it's cutting somebody completely out of their lives. It's cutting them off, right? It's like they don't exist to me anymore. Adultery. What is the seed to adultery? Lust, right? So if you're going to keep feeding lust, it's going to lead to you having an adulterous relationship, right? And so then he jumps into, okay, don't stay angry at a brother in that same 2 passages, right? Don't call your brother or sister raka, empty. Listen, you've got no value. You're an empty vessel. You've got nothing in you, right? Like, don't do that. Don't call him, hey, you fool, right? And part of this teaching of what he's saying is when you're calling people a fool, when you're saying that they're empty, these are not, hey, you've done something bad statements. These are identity statements. You have no value. And then you pause and you realize what you're actually saying, if you actually considered it, is you're saying, the one who created them didn't know what he was doing. He screwed up with you. He didn't know how to put value in you. He didn't know how to make your identity with any kind of goodness. There's nothing inside of you, like you're just an idiot. You're a fool. You're a whatever. And you're like, whoa. What you're doing is you're actually making a comment about the Creator more so than the one he's created, right? So all of these things that we were talking about in Matthew 5 is you have to first recognize his goodness, and then you start seeing his image in people, right? And if you can't see his image in people, then you're more likely to start identifying them as the things that you're frustrated with, okay? So don't do that. If you call them those things, you're in danger of condemnation, right? If your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. Now, is he saying, hey, what I want you to do is physically, if you ever lusted, if you were ever angry, cut out your eye physically and throw it in the garbage? Is that what he's asking? No. He's doing this before he starts talking about a good eye and a bad eye, but then he comes back to it in this passage where he's saying, pearl after pearl after pearl. What I need you to understand is if you have a bad eye, if you're all about stinginess, greed, scarcity, if you're at a place where you don't ever give anybody the benefit of the doubt, if you're always angry with your brother, if you're always at a spot where there's a bitterness, if there's a competition, if there's a rivalry, if there's not enough, if there's no patience, if there's no kindness, if there's no grace, if there's no mercy, if there's no forgiveness, if you've got that stuff in you, cut it out. Cut that eye out of you. Like, it's not going to be good, okay? Digging a little deeper, a speck in your eye, okay? A speck in your eye. Jonathan, you did a great job of painting the K house next door, right? I don't know how many of you guys noticed that, like, he whipped that thing together and he, like, painted it in, like, 2 days. And it's like you came to church and you're like, whoa, it's pretty much done. Except how many people do you think came to Jonathan and said, listen, over by the garage, there's the inside of the trim that didn't get painted yet. Give me a round number. About how many people came to you and told you that? About 20. Okay? I want you to use that as a visual. No condemnation if you were one of the 20. I also was like, hey, just so you know. So I was one of them, all right? You can look at the house, and it looks awesome, right? And you're like, man, everything. But there's just that one thing that's not quite right. We talked about it with Adam and Eve. I have literally access to everything. But God, you know, there's just one thing I don't have access to. It's like, literally, you've got everything, but you're still finding the one thing that's wrong, right? Now, how many people, again, don't point, know somebody in their lives that, like, everything can be right about their life. Everything can be right about their situation, and they'll always pick the one thing that's not quite right, not quite good enough, a little bit lacking, where you're always like, you know what, the external of that person is really good, but I don't know. I know that it's, actually, I'm not going to throw that under the bus. Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're at a spot where you can see the one thing all the time. And you feel like it's your job to point out that one thing all the time. You guys know those people? Okay, good. A beam, a plank. So you've got the speck on the outside of the house next door, right? That little spot that still needs to be painted. P.S., he went back and he painted it. He heard enough people that he said, listen, I was going to paint it. I just had to stop for a minute, and I'll finish the job. Finish the job, looks great, okay? plank or beam in your eye. Okay, it's not just something that is bigger. I need you to hear something for a second. The speck is something external that still needs to be aligned with something that's internal. A plank in an eye is a bad eye. That means that the inside structure. You've got a house and you're building a foundation and you don't have your load-bearing beams in the right spot, what happens? The whole house is eventually going to crumble. Does it crumble right away? No, you keep building on this thing, but eventually you get to a place where there's enough weight on it where you don't have the beams in the right spot, you don't have the protection. It's literally saying, you've got a beam in your eye, you've got a bad eye where your structure for how you see the world, how you see God, how you see yourself is so flawed that it's going to fall in on itself. Right? You have a speck in your eye, your brother's eye, that you know what? Inside their house has got a good structure to it, but you're still quibbling about their paint job. Meanwhile, your house is going to implode because you've got a beam in your eye. Everything that you're going to see is going to be through this lens of darkness. It's going to be distorted. And like that house can't be built. There's an invitation that I think God is inviting me into, our church into, the kingdom of heaven into, is can we build a foundation on a good eye? Are we going to be a people that is quick to be generous, quick to be kind, quick to be patient, quick to forgive, quick to love, quick to have mercy, quick to have an abundance, quick to be generous, quick to be, you know what, I'm going to give my neighbor the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give my coworker the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give my spouse the benefit of the doubt. Right? And sometimes we're like, Pastor Benny, they failed a bunch of times already. Yeah. But are you going to give them the space to not fail the next time? Or are you going to assume that they're going to already? Right? There's an invitation to say, you know what? What happens when you have a people group that decides that we're going to take the bad eye, the scarcity, the greed, the competition, you know what? These people are whatever we identify them as, right? Are we going to be able to remove that part? Are we able to gouge out our eye? Are we able to move the plank so that we can see clearly? And if we see clearly, what are we going to see? We're going to see God's image in them, right? We're going to see the Creator, what the Creator has put in them. And then at that point, if you can see clearly to see first that they're made in the image of God, you're more likely to say, hey, bro, listen, there's this one area that you might be blind to. Like, I'm still going to come help you paint that windowsill, right? But the first part is you got to get your structure right. If your structure on the inside is just darkness, how great is that darkness? Right? If it's just, I'm not going to let anybody hurt me again. I'm going to protect myself. I'm going, you know what? I need to hoard a little bit more money because I don't know what's happening with the financial markets. You know what? I'm going to store some more food. I'm going to do that. Whatever it is that feels like I need to protect mine because there's not enough for everybody, we have to pause and remember that like even in the desert, God can feed an entire population day after day after day. He can give them heat when it's cold. He can give them cool when it's hot. He can make their clothes for 40 years not fall apart. He knows how to provide, right? The temptations that Jesus went through, do you actually trust that He knows what you need? Do you actually trust that He cares enough to meet those needs? Right? Yeah. Yeah, we've got that invitation, right? So you've got this spot here where He's saying, listen, if you could just get the beam out of your eye, the bad eye that's built a structure that's going to collapse, get it out of you. If you want to build a foundation, you have to build it on good. If we can't build a foundation on a good eye as a church, it'll eventually crumble. Whatever we build, the kingdom will crumble. If we can build something as a church based on a good eye, you want your marriage to last, you want your family to last, it has to be built on a good eye. If you don't, it'll crumble. It's just a matter of time. Dogs and pigs. Let's jump to dogs and pigs. Dogs in that world are unclean scavengers. They didn't really have them as pets like we do. So they're going to fight over your scraps. They don't have boundaries. They behave outside of walking out covenant when you're using them as people. So dog people are people who live in the unclean. They don't live by covenant. Okay? Pigs. It's the ultimate unclean animal. Antiochus Epiphanes, if you guys know the story of Hanukkah and the Maccabees and everything else, basically this guy comes on in, they take over the temple, they sacrifice a pig, an abomination of desolation on top of the temple, and they're sitting there and they do like the most unclean animal they sacrifice in the place that's supposed to be a sacrifice for the presence of God, right? It's used in pagan worship. It means desecration. People that are pig people, it's not that they're ignorant of the truth. They're not ignorant of their actions. It's that they see the truth and they decide, I'm going to trample on it, okay? You're going to trample on whatever is sacred. So when Jesus is talking about dog people and pig people, I want to pause for a second. The Jews at this time often would use this as an identity, ethnic thing. The Jews were the ones that were chosen, which means that the Gentiles were the pigs and the dogs, the ones that there's a boundary that they can't be in the holy place. They can't come on in. They can't get to the presence of God. And so those ones that were treated as dogs and pigs, and for them it was more of an ethnic slur. Does that make sense? For Jesus, what he's doing is he's redefining some of these things when he's going through dogs and pigs, and later on we'll get to a place where he communicates to a lady and mentions dog, right? So we're going to get there. But for him, it's a little bit different, okay? Because what he ends up doing is he ends up praising people that are Gentiles that walk by faith, right? Canaanite woman, right? The centurion, the Roman centurion. There's different people that he calls them out by walking by faith. Those that are actually essentially, they're walking in the covenant even if they don't know they are, right, at some level. And then he actually calls out Jews that are not, right? There's times where he's like, hey, temple authorities, you're profaning the temple. Jewish leaders, you're trampling the prophets. Wait, what tramples? Pigs trample. Right? He's calling them things that you're like, wait, that's reserved for the Gentiles. And he's like, no. It's not about Gentile versus Jew. It's about people that care about the holy, the sacred, and those that will profane it. Does that make sense? Okay. He's not trying to exclude pearls from people, but he values the pearls enough to protect them. Okay? Pearls are going to be sacred. They should be guarded. How does Jesus walk this out? Great question. Glad you asked. People that are sincere at seeking, he answers them plainly. When he's got hostile crowds around him, he communicates with parables. He talks about dogs and planks. He talks about things that you're like, what in the world does a grapevine have to do with this? Wait, there's a master in that, and you got two trees? Like, what are you talking about? People that would be hostile towards him, he speaks in parables. Why? Because he's guarding pearls. He knows that the people that are hungry will get fed. The people that are hungry are going to keep digging until they get the revelation. The people that are just reactive, that aren't going to be able to receive it, they're not ready to receive light. He talks in parables and they walk away confused. But what does he do is he protects some of those pearls, right? When people are looking for a spectacle, he usually withdraws from the crowd. Even later, he's got the discernment that, like, you got Herod and Pilate that want to know stuff from him, demanding answers. And what does he do? He stays silent. He's not making a worth statement that these people identify. These guys' identity is a pig or as a dog, or they'll never get it. He's partially saying, hey, this is about timing. And not everybody is ready for the same amount of light at the same time. Okay? It's like if we went into the bottom of a mine, it's super, super dark. Yeah? Has everybody done that at some point in time, or most of you? Right? If we were to flip on the lights immediately, what would we have? We'd have this blindness where it's just like goes from dark to light too fast. Right? It's almost like you have to cover some of the light and slowly expose it, right? The transfiguration. One of the cool things for me about the transfiguration is when I realized that, like, the whole miracle of it wasn't that he, like, shone in all of his brightness. It's that he didn't shine in his brightness all the time, right? Like, for me, it's this realization that he had to dim his light or we would have immediately rejected him. He had to be born in the lowest of conditions and, like, all the way down here so that slowly he could add light to the equation for us to see, because we would all reject the amount of light that God the Son had if he showed all of his brilliance day one, right? It's wild to me that he did that he had the ability to do that, okay? For him, he's saying it's a matter of readiness. There's different people that are ready to see things at different times. And so you need to have discernment, right? So one of the things you end up having is you have some people that, like, man, I receive all of this truth, and what do I want to do immediately? I want to tell everybody. I got to tell my neighbor. I got to tell my coworker. I got to tell my friend. I got to tell I was this way back in the day. There's an immaturity that feels like if I have a pearl, I need to give it to people. And then I'm shocked when people, like, reject it and are sometimes, like, malicious or angry towards me. Jesus is like, yeah, duh. Like, don't throw your pearls before swine. They're not ready for it. They're not ready to actually get this string of pearls that you've learned in church. You know what? If they're not living by the covenant, don't expect them to hold them to the standard of a covenant. Right? Instead, you have to help them see that their identity isn't as a pig and as a dog, but as a son of the living God. And when they start seeing their identity through his lens, now they're at a spot where they're going to be hungry to receive the pearls of what the kingdom looks like. Really what the king looks like. Okay? Here's a slide for that. Somebody that's immature is going to consider that all openness is wisdom. And there's going to be times where you have to learn a discernment of knowing when to have boundaries and when to be completely exposed and vulnerable with people, right? It gets torn apart by the world around them, not because they have bad intentions, because they've got poor sight. Flip side, somebody with mature, discerning, good eye. The first thing they have to do is they examine themselves with humility, not with shame, right? And they invite God to search them too, right? God, search my heart, know my innermost being, right? They let the Creator determine who their identity is and who other people's identity is. And they believe the Creator instead of their own experiences or what their judgment is of somebody else or themselves, right? They've relinquished their judgment and said, okay, God, can I hear what you have to say about them? You get the measure that you decide you're going to hold on to. If you said, actually, I really like having the veto power of, like, I really want to judge others and judge myself, then you get to deal with that cycle of shame and anger and fear and anxiety and worry and mistrust and all of those things. And you get to do that cycle over and over and over and over and over again until you say, God, can you give me the grace to trust you that you say that you enjoy me, you like me, you made me with goodness, that you, like, dreamt about me in my mother's womb and you said, you know what, the world needs a little bit of this, right? That there's a spark of light where God says, you know what, I created you with light. I created you with salt. This is part of your identity. And if you can actually hold on to that, it's good. People with a good eye have the strength to be gentle with others. Generally speaking, it's because when they ruthlessly take a look at themselves, when they consider themselves, they realize, man, I had more junk in the inside than I thought I did, right? And when you do that, you realize, man, well, he's the one that can heal it. If he can heal it with me, I should be patient with him healing it with somebody else, right? And know when not to engage, when to have patience, when to have boundaries. They protect what is holy, but it's not a hoarding. Hoarding goes back to the bad eye. You want to give freely, but there's a discernment in knowing when and who to give to, right? Some discernment stuff, right? When your eyes are clear and good, you'll see the speck in your brother clearly. You're still called to have the discernment to see the speck. You're still accountable to try to help your brother remove anything that clouds their vision. You're invited to mature with discernment to know when, how, with whom to reveal truth, light, and the sacred pearls. Not everyone can receive the same level of light at the same time. If you're here and you're still at a spot where you're like, I'm not quite sure if I've got a good eye or a bad eye, here's some things that might help you with discernment. If your eye is healed, when people correct you, it restores you. Pearls of truth are valued and protected, and you use wisdom to discern. If your eye is dark, other people's correction is going to wound you every time. And the truth is going to provoke a violent reaction inside of you that sometimes overflows on the people next to you. And you're going to give out judgment back quickly to people, right? If you feel like, man, I'm in that spot where I'm in that second eye spot, what do I do, Pastor Benny? The first thing that we do is we always go back to the healer. We go back to the one that can remove the plank, right? And so we have to get to the spot where we say, God, help me be honest with myself. I react so often out of a bad eye towards this person or towards this thing or towards this situation or towards everything. And then you say, God, can you help me? Can you heal my eyes? I want to live in a way where I see your goodness. That I'm not looking at the news and I'm surrounded by fear and scarcity and competition and all of the things that are like, man, people are just trampling each other out there, right? John 3. We talked a little bit about that last week. I'm going to read this with a little bit of interpretation as we go. For God so loved the world. God loved you. He gave his one and his only Son, that whoever believes in him, his Son, they're not going to perish, but they're going to have eternal life. God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world. God didn't start with a bad eye. God's not looking just to condemn and judge you. He's not looking to count your sins so that he can come after you. That was never his intention. If you know an angry God that is upset with you, that is just looking for the first time you screw up, you don't know the Father. He didn't come to condemn the world, but to save the world. He had a desire to bring you freedom. Whoever believes in him is not condemned because you believe that your identity is tied to who he says you are. And if you understand and actually have the courage to believe who he says you are, there's no condemnation for them that are in Christ Jesus. There's no condemnation. So if you're living in condemnation and shame, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do I actually believe that I am who he says I am? Whoever does not believe stands condemned already. Not just condemned by him. It's because you chose that I'm going to be the judge of my life. And when you're the judge, you're going to see everything that's wrong in others. You're going to see everything that's wrong in yourself. And your entire life is going to be living in condemnation. Because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. So this is the verdict. Light, which is synonymous a lot of times with a good eye. Light has come into the world. But people, they loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. If you're living in a spot where you are the judge, where you are the ruler of your life, you don't want people to see that your beam on the inside is not good, that there's a corrosion on the inside that's going to implode. You're going to be at a spot where you're going to be quick to show everybody else's flaws so that nobody has time and space to see your own. Okay? It's going to look like an actor, like a hypocrite, where everything on the outside religiously looks good, but the inside, it's not so good, right? You don't want to get into the light because light actually becomes an enemy. Light would expose the things that are on the inside, so you do everything you can to stay in the dark. But whoever lives by the truth walks into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. That doesn't mean that those that are walking in the light have done everything perfectly. It's that they have an understanding that when I'm in the light, yeah, my junk is going to be shown. But who is it going to be shown to? Him. He's the judge. He's going to see clearly. I'm going to open up vulnerably and open, and I'm going to let him be the judge. And thank goodness that he comes with love and with grace, with forgiveness, right? Because he's actually going to judge me much more favorably than I'm going to judge me. Isn't that wild? It all starts with, do I have the courage for self-reflection? And not only self-reflection, but can I actually say, God, search my heart. Show me anything that's dark. Show me anything that's of a bad eye. Show me anything that's of a plank, of a beam, of something that I've built the structure of my life on something that's going to fall apart. Then give me the courage to gouge that thing out, to take that out. And if that means that you have to start over with a new foundation, may it be a foundation that's good. Because anything built on a good foundation that he's building is going to be good. Anything that I build in my life that might look good to everybody else, but doesn't have the right foundation, is eventually going to crumble. Every single time. Some reflections. Not every eye is ready for the same light at the same time. 2, a bad eye judges too quickly and give too recklessly. 3, a good eye sees clearly, loves wisely, and protects what is sacred. 4, restore your lamp before illuminating others. 5, a bad eye evaluates if people are worthy for pearls. A good eye evaluates when they're ready for giving pearls. 6, judgment and people that live with a bad eye and judgment often masquerade as light. 7, God sent his son because he saw you as a pearl of great price. Do we see others as his pearls too? Do we see him as a pearl of great price in our own lives? I'm going to have the worship team come back on up. We're going to have some open-ended worship. If you're here today and you're at a spot where you're like, I think I just need to sit with this and like be honest with myself and ask God these questions of, do I have a good eye? Do I have a bad eye? Do I want to be done with my bad eye? Do I trust the doctor in gouging out my eye, healing my eye, restoring my eye? Building a new foundation, if I want to be a part of a church that is going to be like that. Now is like a really good time, especially in the turn to the next year, to really evaluate those things, to really say, God, may 2026 be a year of a good eye. And may it be the start of something that becomes who I am forever. So Heavenly Father, I just ask that you would give us eyes to see you. God, I ask that you'd give us eyes to see us the way that you see us. God, give us the courage to trust you. God, give us the softness of heart to believe it, to let it sink deep inside. God, I ask that you would help us love our spouses, our families, our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers with a good eye. God, help us to know and have discernment of when to give pearls to people and when to talk in parables, and when to help people dig, when to sit and listen. God, help us to see if we have a plank in our own eyes and give us the courage to pull it or let you pull it. God, if we can see clearly, if we see with a good eye, help us to help restore the brothers that have got just a little speck on the outside that's not quite finished. God, we acknowledge that you're good. We acknowledge that you're faithful. We acknowledge that you're the only one that can restore and redeem. And God, I'm so thankful. I'm thankful that you came not to condemn the world. Your goal wasn't just angry judgment. Your goal was an invitation into freedom, an invitation back into wholeness, an invitation to have peace not only on their outsides, but peace on our inside. God, an invitation to hope again, an invitation for joy, an invitation to love fully, an invitation to have connection with you and have connection with others that is just healthy, that it's life-giving, that it's abundant. God, that there's more than enough of your presence to go around. There's more than enough of your goodness to go around. God, help us to be quick to receive your goodness so that we be quick to give it. God, I ask that you give us ears to hear your voice today. Speak to our hearts. Tell us the truth. Give us the ability to protect and guard the truth, those sacred pearls, before we share it with somebody who's just going to trample on it. God, light a fire in us. Burn away anything that's junky. Bring light on our insides to anybody that needs light. Put a warmth in us that draws people to your fire.